there, this is Dennis Anyone with Dennis Hensley. It's a podcast about making things up and making things happen. Creative people, how they do their thing, why they do their thing, how they keep doing their thing. That's what I love to talk about. And today my guest is an author named David Ciminello. He has a wonderful novel out called The Queen of Steeplechase Park. It's about this wonderful, larger-than-life character named Belladonna Marie Donato. She's a burlesque queen. She's a meatball maker. It's set in partly in Coney Island, and it's just this rich world that he creates with this really one-of-a-kind character. It's sexy. It's very queer. It's delightful. And I'm going to be appearing with David at an event he's doing here in L.A. at Book Soup on Sunday, November 10th at 3 p.m. He's going to read a little bit. We're going to ask him a few questions, and it's going to be really fun. So if you're in L.A., come out for that. In the meantime, we've got the interview. But first, I want to remind you that this podcast, Dennis Anyone, is brought to you by me. I do it because I love it. I think art and creativity make the world go around, and I like to celebrate the people that are doing it. But if you want to support the podcast, there are a few things you can do. You can go to DennisAnyone.net, and you can leave a tip in my virtual tip jar. Help me cover my expenses. There's also a fun thing on there called Buy Me a Coffee, so you can do that as well. And the other thing you can do is become a subscriber to DNR Studios. For a monthly fee, you get my show early, and you get all these other great queer shows that are part of the DNR podcast empire, and you can learn about that at dnrstudios.com. All right, here now is the interview with the author of The Queen of Steeplechase Park, David Ciminello. Joining me now from Portland, Oregon, it's David Ciminello. He is the author of the novel The Queen of Steeplechase Park. Welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Dennis. It's great to be with you.
We've been working on this for a while now, making this happen, but we're doing it now because you're coming to Los Angeles to do an appearance at Book Soup on November 10th at 3 p.m. if you're in Los Angeles, and I'm going to be interviewing you, which I'm very excited about. So
I'm also really excited.
It's all coming together. So I read your book. I loved it. First of all, I feel like I gained 40 pounds just reading it because there's this food part of it that is just like your mouth literally. I listened to it mostly, and your mouth is just literally watering while you're listening to it. So how would you describe the book to someone who knew nothing about it?
Well, the elevator pitch is The Queen of Steeplechase Park is the absolutely, positively, practically almost true story of infamous burlesque queen and magic meatball maker Belladonna Marie Donato. Based on the life of my great aunt, it takes place in Coney Island during the 1930s.
Well, I noticed, because I listened to the audio is how I consume the book, so I was looking at the print copy that I got, and there's a photo in the back. And I was like, wait, who is that picture? Who is this person? So talk to me about the photo. That
is a photo of my great aunt, who Amazing. I based the character of Belladonna Marie Donato on. And so it's a picture of her standing on a beach, probably Coney Island, in the sand, in heels, like Betty Grable.
Gorgeous. It's just like such an amazing photo. And how much did you know about your aunt's life before you embarked on this?
The germ of the story was planted when I was watching the 4:30 movie in New Jersey, which was a movie series that came on at 4:30 in the afternoon, 5 days a week. And they had Natalie Wood week. They had Warren Beatty week. They had, every actor was featured a different week or two. And this was Natalie Wood week, and the movie Gypsy was on.
Right.
And it was the Gotta Have a Gimmick number. When that was over, my mother was sitting on the couch and she was giggling. And I must have been 7 or 8 years old. And I looked at her and I said, "What's so funny?" And she said, "Well, my aunt used to do that." And I said, "What aunt?" And she said, "My aunt Emily, your great aunt Emily, did burlesque in Coney Island. She was a stripper." So that sort of planted the seed of the story in my head. And growing up, I mean, by the time I was about that age, she had already moved to the West Coast. She was living in California.
Right.
And she would blow into New Jersey like a hurricane. I mean, all of her bodacious 38 triple D, which she proudly told me she was, figure, she would blow into town and have the entire family in stitches for a week and then blow away. And I was just mesmerized by her because she was like this huge, iconic, colorful opera diva of a woman who just grabbed life by the balls and shook it until it was done.
She had that kind of Auntie Mame, Sally Bowles, like that, those larger-than-life women that appeal to gay men. When I wrote my book, Misadventures in the 213, somebody compared it to that dynamic because there's the wacky celebrity character, Dandy, and then the gay person that's kind of like, you know, the girl is the cocktail that gets the gay guy out of the dance floor, like this one that invites you into a bigger life, right? And she sort of has that. Complete with a gay friend, which I loved that character in the book, Tonelli. Am I saying that right? Tonelli is
Torelli Lombardi.
Torelli, yes. Oh, I loved him. I loved how queer your book was with the different characters and things emerging that you didn't know about. Why was that important to you to include? Because when we think of period pieces, we don't always imagine ourselves in those stories, but of course we were there, right?
That's exactly right. That's such a great question, Dennis. I don't know. And hopefully we can talk about this and I can hear a little bit of your story in terms of growing up queer and what that was like. But for me, growing up queer, I was pegged at an early age. I was marginalized. I was bullied. I was picked on. I was tossed off the school bus. All for being this effeminate little boy who was obsessed with Barbie dolls.
Right.
I couldn't get enough of them. And then I sort of butched it up. I went through high school. I put on a jean jacket. I slapped a pack of marbles in my breast pocket, and I didn't talk to anyone for 4 years.
Wow.
All the while nurturing this fantasy of being an actor, of falling into a motion picture camera or a TV camera and never coming out.
Right. I think a lot of us saw things in the TV and the movies and pop culture magazines that felt like a way out of a place. My place wasn't that. There wasn't that much bullying, but I didn't see myself in that world as a grown up. Like, what am I going to do here? And I have a lot of affection for my hometown, and I love my family, but it just didn't feel like me. So these other things really called to me, this life and this world. But I love that. You know, sometimes you think, oh, I'm going to write a book that's set in the past. Well, there probably won't be that many gay people in it but you didn't do that. You were like, you brought that in. And I really appreciated it. The friendship, the dynamic, you know, the gay character, they go shoplifting together, which is always a fun thing to do if you don't like what's at the movies or whatever. Your character of Belladonna, the hero of the book, is very what we would call today sex positive. She likes sex, and she liked it before she even had it. And the way she talks about sex is very interesting to me. Can you just talk about that part of her character and how you approached that and how you thought about it as you were working on the book?
Well, my great aunt was very sensual, very sexual human being. She was all about her appearance, all about being sexual. I mean, I heard stories about her at weddings where she would balance champagne glasses on her breasts, where she wouldn't let a party go by without coming on to, 10 different husbands.
Right.
She always had to be the center of attention. She was a really wild girl.
Right.
So wild, in fact, she ended up getting pregnant when she was 15. The baby was taken away from her. It was adopted away without her consent. And her parents actually had her sterilized, which was legal.
So all of these things that happened to Belladonna happened to your aunt, those sort of inciting incidents in the book.
Exactly. The inciting incidents or basic facts all came from my great aunt's life.
How did you guys find out that she'd been sterilized? Like, because a lot of these secrets they go to the grave, right? How did you guys find out about this part of her life?
All of that. Well, I didn't know about any of this until I would say maybe just before I started writing the novel. So that's when I started to get little bits and pieces of her story. Her son had tried to get in touch with her, had tried to find her, and he had gotten some private eyes who had gotten in touch with my great aunt's sister, my grandmother, my mother's mother, and my grandmother got in touch with my great aunt and said, "Your son is looking for you. They've contacted me. my great aunt was in California at the time, and her knee-jerk response was, "Don't tell him where I am."
Wow.
I think that was the first story that came to me that sort of opened up the Pandora's box. And from then on, little bits and pieces started coming to me.
Yeah. Now, I understand from reading the acknowledgments that you've worked on this for quite a while. When did you first start it?
I started working on this book, I want to say, probably a little before I left LA. So I left LA in about 2000. I had a previous life there as a professional actor and screenwriter. And I found my way into two workshops in Los Angeles. The first was at the Los Angeles Gay and Lesbian Center. There was a free arts program.
Love it. I love that organization. I do benefits for them with the Mismatch Game. And yeah, it's a favorite place of mine.
Yeah, they're amazing. And it was a free arts program that I got wind of. And they had writing classes run by a woman by the name of Terry Wolverton, who runs Writers at Work in Los Angeles.
Yeah, no, I've heard her name for sure.
Yeah, she's amazing. And she was an amazing teacher. And it was free. And all you had to do was apply and get in. And I did. And the second class I took was at a thing called IGLE, the Institute for Gay and Lesbian Education, which was started in the mid-'90s, early to mid-'90s in Los Angeles by Simon LeVay, who studied the gay brain.
Right on.
And was the differences between straight and gay brains. And so that was a queer screenwriting course taught by the name of Jim Boyle. That was really cool. Yeah. That was Terry's workshop, which had about 30 people in it, the beginning workshop at the Gay and Lesbian Center, and Jim Boyle's queer screenwriting workshop at IGLE. That was the first time I was actually, as a queer person, sitting in a room with a bunch of other students who were all queer, were all like me. And it gave me the freedom, and I think gave everyone the freedom to just express ourselves fully and joyfully.
Yeah, it is something when you're in that space and you don't have to think about how I hold my books or anything. Like all of that policing that we've done all our lives. And younger generations don't do as much of it as we do. But I see it in, like, I've gotten back into the dancing world, and I see it in the way the younger men dance. Like we were always trying to butch it up, because that was the difference between getting hired and not getting hired or whatever. And I just see the freedom with young people, and I think it's so awesome. We were talking about the sex positivity of your main character. She doesn't talk about making love or being out. She's like, I want to fuck that guy. Let's fuck. And I just love it. And it's never like as a thing because it's her way to get what she really needs is love. No, she wants to fuck. And that's and there's never any softening of that, really. I mean, she's a deeply loving person, but I love that that's a part of her story. There's a sex scene early on in the book that's just a knockout. And I want to ask you about that because I recently went back and read a screenplay that I haven't looked at that I wrote probably like 8 years ago. And I liked most of it. Most of it I stood by. There was a sex scene that made me cringe. And I was like, ugh, I just don't, because I think I wrote about what I wanted it to be like instead of what it was like. You know, within these characters, based on my own experience. It was a fantasy of what it would be. And I think I've gotten to a point where I'm like, oh no, just tell the truth. So talk about writing sex scenes, because this is different. It's not, it's more of a character driven thing in a different world. But I just love that it was so colorful and fun and unabashed, and how you approached that part of the book.
For me, it was, I guess, what I like to say to people when they ask me about the character and how I came to write Belladonna Marie Donato is that beneath this sort of, I would say mostly cis-presenting exterior beats the heart of a bodacious burlesque queen. Mm-hmm. So that character is inside me.
Yeah.
All of the characters are in me, but I think that deep inside me beats the heart of a bodacious burlesque queen.
That's going to be the episode title, by the way. Yeah.
And I think there's a little bit of Bella in everybody.
Yeah.
And that character for me, she was all about freedom, and the joyful and appetite. And the Holy Trinity, I posted this when I was recently in Italy, and I was taking pictures of the book in all these different places, in front of the Duomo. And one of the bylines I posted was, Belladonna Marie Donato's Holy Trinity: God, food, and sex.
Yeah.
And that's what she's all about. And it's basic, and it's real, and it's human, and it's what life is really all about.
Yeah. Well, and the object of her lust in the beginning is Francis, a character who, as a gay man, he sounded like the hottest person that's ever walked the earth. He was so hot that they modeled the Jesus painting off of him, and the hair and the lips and the way you describe him. And like, as a gay man, I'm like, oh my God, I love Italian men anyway. But he just sounded like the hottest thing that ever walked. But he was nice. He was a nice guy.
That's right. Yeah. And pansexual.
Yeah. And he was friends with the gay guy and did stuff, and was not a big deal. And that was cool. And just Francis, is there a vision in your head of what Francis looks like? Is there an actor or a model? Have you thought about that?
That's a great question. A young Antonio Sabato Jr.
Yep. I got you. Yeah.
I'm
with
just
it.
sort of
The Love Will Never Do Without You video when he was doing that. Yeah. I see it.
The Calvin Klein underwear ads. Yeah.
Yeah. I worked with him on Testosterone. I co-wrote a screenplay and he was in it. And there are stories for another time about Antonio Sabato Jr. But I liked him. He went for it. Like, he was game. And he gave us full frontal, which you can't, you can't be
can't fault a man for that.
You can't, how he can go so Trumpy. I don't know if he could go that so Trumpy that I would turn away from the full frontal. Like, it's still in the asset column. So a lot of your book is set at Coney Island, which I've always heard about, but I've never been. Did you go there and spend a lot of time there? Do you know it well?
I went when I was living in New York from about 2005 until 2016. I did go a number of times. Yeah. And it was really fun to explore and to sort of suss out the old vestiges of what used to be there. But most of what I created in the book came from research.
Yeah.
Like a lot of research.
What did you discover that surprised you about that time and that place?
Just the sense of freedom and exuberance and how incredibly popular it was. It was the Disneyland of its day.
Like, it was cool. Like,
it was cool.
It was glamorous. Now it's a little bit like ironic or something, like, like but it was the place to go.
It was the place to go. Yeah. It was incredibly glamorous. And that's when my great aunt ended up there. She found that ad, which is true, in the newspaper, wanted female dancers for Coney Island Review. And she packed her pink hat box and was off and running.
Wow.
She's like, I'm going.
I love that she was based on a real person. I don't think I got that until this conversation. Is she still with us, your great aunt?
No, she passed away in 2004. But I got a chance to go down to Florida, where she was living at the time, and interview her.
So you knew you were maybe going to write about her life in a book, and so you were able to sort of talk to her.
That's right. And she knew it too, because at that point I had a script that had been produced, the movie Bruno, which is on DVD as The Dress Code, which was directed by Shirley MacLaine. So she knew that. And when she got wind of the fact that I was going to be writing a book based on some of her stories, she got really excited.
I bet.
And she was telling everybody, I'm going to be in the book. I'm going to be in the book. I'm going to be in the book. But little did she know, she was the book.
Right. What do you think she would think of it finished?
That's a great question. I think the first thing she would do is cry. Because of the all of the emotions attached to all of the things that happened to her, like getting pregnant at 15, having the baby taken away, getting sterilized. I wonder if she might feel exposed having those stories in the book. But she had a huge ego. She was a bit of a narcissist. And I think once she got a gander of the cover.
She would love that cover. She would love that cover.
And of the response to the book, she would be rolling in it and relishing it.
She would be loving it.
I think so.
What were the themes you were interested in exploring when you set out to write it? Because to me, I think it's a book about resilience. It's about a book about being true to yourself. Yeah. It's a book about bad parents.
Yeah.
Shitty parents, man. And I've seen like 3 or 4 things recently with shitty parents. And I'm like, man, they don't have to. You could even be sort of an average parent but like these people are like the worst. So what were you thinking about when you set out to write it? What were the themes that you wanted to explore?
Just going back to that idea of what it was like growing up queer.
Yeah.
It was most important for me to write a book that was completely queer positive, that was chock full of queer optimism. Mm-hmm. And the basic facts that I took about my great aunt's life, I took those facts and I created this character of Belladonna Marie Donato, who would not let anything that happened to her stand in her way. And every character that she meets in the book is an expression of that. Whether it's Torelli Lombardi, her queer friend, whether it's Francis Anthony Mozzarelli, the beautiful bodybuilder who poses for Christ. All of these characters are fully, authentically, and joyfully who they are. In the face of whatever adversity comes their way, they don't care. Come hell or high water, they're going to be who they are. And that's it. So it was really important for me to express that. Redemption, survival, resilience, gumption, grit. All of those qualities, I think, were really important for me to put in the book.
Talk to me about the parents in the book, because Francis doesn't have great parenting. Belladonna Marie certainly doesn't have great parenting. They're kind of on their own in a way.
Exactly.
Yeah. What made you want to explore that idea?
I think that was just coincidence. And I don't know how much of that comes from my own life. I had really good parents in so many respects, but my father was emotionally distant and my mom suffered from depression. Mm-hmm. My mom was a teeny character. She was larger than life herself, and she was never able to fully express it.
Yeah.
I would come home from school, Dennis, when I was a kid, and the entire house would be 3 p.m, 4 p.m. Every blind would be down, and the house would be dark. My mother would be sound asleep, and that was normal for me.
Right.
So I guess I just sort of transcribed that or transposed that into Bella's mother.
Right, who was just sort of kind of in bed for the whole book, pretty much.
That's right.
And she goes through things. You understand it. But
right.
Belladonna has that thing where I can get up again, even when she goes through horrible things. There are recipes throughout the book for these amazing Italian dishes, and just mouthwatering, especially the meatballs. That was her specialty. So how did the idea to include recipes come up? And I'd like to hear more about how you approach that. Like, where did the recipes come from?
Well, growing up, amidst all the turmoil of growing up, was family and food. Those two things were always so important to me, and were always so nurturing. I was close to all 4 of my grandparents until they passed away. All 4 of them, I had them all until after my mother passed away in 1999. So family was always around, and food was always around. The most amazing food. My mother went to the store, the corner store that's in the book on Kruger Place, and learned to cook from Mary LaMonaco, who in the book is Big Betty LaMonaco.
Right, who teaches Bella to cook when she's very, very young.
That's right. So that story came from my mother, learning how to make tomato gravy when she was in high school. My mother was an incredible Italian cook, everything from chicken parmesan to eggplant parmesan to lasagna to the best meatballs. I had it all growing up, and it was of such comfort to me. One of my favorite books ever is Fried Green Tomatoes at the Whistle Stop Cafe.
Right. And you get a blurb from Fannie Flagg. Well played.
I did. Which is a series of folktales.
Yeah.
And about the joy of living, and very queer positive in its own, I want to say mildly dated way, only because things were not allowed to be expressed the way they are today.
Yeah.
But an amazing book full of food and family and folklore. And that was my true inspiration for this. That and Armistead Maupin's Tales of the City.
Yeah. You want to hear my fried green tomato story? I went to see that at Universal Amphitheater, the movie, on Super Bowl Sunday. And I remember there was a cute guy in the audience. And I remember thinking, I wonder if he's gay. And I think looking back, it was fried green tomatoes on Super Bowl Sunday. I think the odds are probably in my favor that he was gay. So
100%.
100%. But I remember thinking, gee, I wonder. Now I'm like, duh, right? So the actual recipes that are in the book, are those family recipes, or did you try out different ones and like, oh, this is the Parmigiano one I want to do? Or like, how did you put those together?
Most of them are family recipes. And I cook a lot myself, so I've always got a pot of tomato gravy going on. I've got some bolognese in the fridge right now that I'm going to have tonight.
Who's catering the book soup thing? Because like I really expect there's got to be some like sauce happening. I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to be disappointed if there isn't. I don't know. They don't usually serve full pasta dishes at bookstores, but man, the food in this book is out of this world. Have you heard of people using the recipes since the book came out?
Yeah, I've had people post pictures of the book cover with like tomato gravy stains on the cover.
Amazing.
With pictures of, pans of chicken Parmesan saying grazie mille, thank you. This is amazing. This is delicious.
That must feel so good, right? To just see that sort of combination of food and that they enjoyed the book and the way they're bringing it into their lives in a way. That's so gratifying. It's
completely gratifying. Yeah.
Was it fun to write the recipes? Because you add in parts of the storyline along with the recipes. Like, this is when you're heartbroken and you go for this kind of cake and you add 2 doses of heartbreak or whatever. Like, how did you approach that? That looks like it might have been fun.
Very early on, I got the idea that I wanted to just have chapters that were actual recipes, just standalone recipes as their own chapters.
Right.
And so I knew I was going to do that from the very beginning. And as I started to do that, as I started to layer these recipes into the book, each recipe is positioned relevant to the plot. So, if her sister says, I really want you to make your chicken Parmesan tonight. You make the best chicken Parmesan. Bella's like, all right, I'll make the goddamn chicken Parmesan tonight. Jesus Christ, y'all drive me crazy. Tony wants it crispy. You want them thick, but I'll do it. So, of course, the next chapter will be for chicken Parmesan. And as I started writing and revising the book, it became apparent that just the idea of just sort of lacing into the recipes themselves, these little life lessons based on the plot that was surrounding them, sort of became natural, to drop these little Easter eggs into the recipes.
Was cooking and eating part of the writing process? Did that help you work on it while you were doing it?
Cooking and eating is a part of my process, period.
Right?
Yeah, I just love to cook and eat. So I cook all the time.
Yeah.
Dennis, all the time. If I was in Los Angeles, I would show up at your doorstep with a tray of chicken Parmesan.
The best. Have you spent much time in Italy?
I just got back from Italy, my 4th time there. Have you?
Yeah, a fair amount. Yeah, actually, I've been to Rome a few times on my own, and then I worked on cruise ships. So I spent a lot of time cruising the Mediterranean, and all my best friends on the ships were Italian. So I started trying to learn a bit of it at the time, and I just felt a real connection to the place. I loved it, and Rome is one of my favorite cities. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Italian crew on a cruise ship.
Yeah, most of the people in the galley. It was Princess Cruises, and they had crew from all over the world. But the people that were in the restaurant, a lot of the waiters and most of the cooks were Italian. I have friends. One of them is still a maitre d' on the ship. My best friend was a pastry chef on one of the ships. And I'd go down to the galley late at night because he worked the night shift and have croissants. And yeah, I was very enamored of that whole thing. I felt like it was kind of my thing. Like, I love the Italians. Like, I felt like it felt like my thing a little bit. Like I was a little proud of it, I guess, in a way. But I felt it. I felt a joie de vivre, or I don't know. I felt like they knew how to live a little bit. I remember speaking of food and Italians, we were cruising in Alaska, and we went to Victoria, BC, and I took one of my Italian friends out to brunch. And it was like pancakes and like stuff like that. And he was kind of into it, but he was kind of like, he kind of didn't like that it was just one thing. Like, it was just pancake. Like, he was like, I don't know. He was like trying to be nice about it, but I could tell he wasn't loving the pancake brunch. I guess he was used to different things, like more than one thing, or like it was just a funny memory. But
a good roll with some prosciutto,
Yes, what would it kill you to throw in a little of this or a little of that? How hard was it for you to get the book published and get it across the finish line? Did that take a while? Were there a lot of ups and downs?
Yeah, it took a while. After about a year of querying, of sending out query letters to agents, I sent maybe, I want to say about 100 query letters. Out of the 100 query letters, I got 11 nibbles, requests.
Right.
Out of the 11 nibbles, I got 2 who seriously considered taking on the manuscript.
Right.
And one of them was an agency called Writer's House in New York.
And this is agencies. This isn't publishers yet. Or,
right.
Yeah.
These are agents. That was the first step.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Writer's House, I got a really nice email, a very long email from an assistant to one of the agents there who listed all the things she loved about the book. And then the 3 things she wanted to see addressed, and gave me what's called in the business an R&R, a revise and resubmit request. Really, once you get that, you take 1 to 3 months to implement the notes if they jive with you, and then send the book back. And 9 out of 10 times or 8 out of 10 times they'll take it if the notes are met to their satisfaction.
Interesting.
So the 3 notes I got from the assistant at Writer's House were she wanted the backstory of the parents. So the whole Sicily backstory of Belladonna Marie Donato's parents wasn't in the book until then.
Interesting. It's at the beginning of the book. And there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, and she wanted certain characters expanded, certain supporting characters, one of them being Torelli Lombardi.
Love him.
I gave Torelli a complete arc and brought him all the way to the end of the book. We're not going to say how, but so that was new. And then she said the ending itself wasn't in keeping with the canon of the rest of the book, so I had to adjust the ending a little bit. And that was it. And I sent it back. I got that in like October, November, December. I sent it back. But before I sent it back, I thought, geez, wouldn't it be really crappy if that assistant wasn't there anymore? And I Googled it, and sure enough, she was gone.
Wow. Oh, my gosh. My stomach just dropped out of I get it.
So did mine.
What did you do?
Well, I emailed the agent, and the new assistant got back to me and said, yeah, the assistant's gone. I'm the new assistant. Your book is still in play. We'll be in touch soon. So that was good.
Yeah.
But it took them, so that was December, January, February, March, April. So almost 4 months. It took them 4 months to make their decision.
Yeah.
To read through the manuscript and make their decision. In the meantime, Forest Avenue Press, which is this amazing press here, run out of Portland, Oregon, an independent press, had their open call for submissions. So I sent the manuscript in, and Laura Stanfield, who runs Forest Avenue Press, got back to me and said, I want the book. What's going on with the book? Where is it? And I told her what was going on with Writer's House. And Laura very generously said to me, David, if Writer's House takes the book, I want you to go with them. I want you to go on that ride. I want you to see if you can get this book placed with one of the big 5. If it doesn't work out, I just want you to know I'm going to publish your book.
Whoever says anything like that emphatically, people are always dangling things because they don't want to commit. And I understand it, but when somebody really makes a promise like that, it's so rare to get that kind of communication in this business world of books and creativity. That must have meant a lot. So then you ended up going with Forrest.
Yeah. Honestly, Dennis, it meant everything to me. So when Writer's House finally got back to me and said, they love the language, they love the plot, they love the book, but they didn't love it enough. They didn't see how they could place it with the big 5. I said, thank you very much. And I stopped querying immediately. And I called Laura and said, the book is yours.
Wow. And then what was the process like from then on? Were there revisions? Was there how did it go from there?
It was an amazing process. Well, first was the cover design, which was done by a Portland artist named Gigi Little. And I love that cover. And so she took that picture that's in the back of the book of my great aunt singing Heels in the Sand and went to town.
Yeah.
It's basically put Coney Island and the tomatoes and the sash and the big bowl of meatballs and the cover was born. And I think she did an amazing job capturing the spirit of the book. And Laura had very few notes. The one note she had for me was that she wanted the ending slowed down. So and I said, I know exactly how to do that. So the entire set piece at the end of the book where her brother-in-law, Joe, and her little brother, Luigi, come back to rescue her. Yeah. I won't say much more beyond that, is all new. Wow. And that gave me an opportunity to bring in other characters, Dino Montebologna being one of them, and to slow that ending down and make it a bit more dramatic. It was a lot of fun. I had a blast with that. So that was an additional 40 pages.
Yeah. Do you imagine an actor that would play Belladonna in a movie? Do you think that way?
I do. Do you?
Well, I was trying to think of it. I was trying to think of both of them, but Francis and the different characters. I was trying to think, but I didn't think of a Belladonna Marie yet. But I haven't really racked my brain. Do you have somebody in mind?
Well, when people ask me that, the one person that comes to mind is for me Adele. But full-figured Adele.
Right, because you need somebody bodacious, and so many of our actors are very thin. And you need somebody with that Christina Hendricks vibe on Mad Men with the va-va-voom, which is a different standard of beauty than we have today. I would love. Have you explored that idea? Or do you want it? Would you love it to be a movie? Is there any news on that front?
There's no news at the moment. That I can discuss, but I would love it if that happened. I think it would make an amazing miniseries. It's right up there in terms of. Did you see Veneno on HBO Max?
No, but I heard about it. It's queer, right? It's like yeah.
It's about Cristina Ortiz, the famous drag queen or transsexual drag queen from Spain. Right and on. It's an amazing miniseries, very Pedro Almodovar. It's wonderful. It's on HBO Max. I would like to see it something like that on Netflix or Amazon Prime. I think it would be an amazing miniseries.
Yeah. What are the reactions that you've heard from the book from people that have meant a lot to you? Are there surprises in terms of who you're hearing from or emails that you remember or anything like that?
Well, when I was back east, when I was at the beginning of the book tour and I was back east, I stopped in to my aunt's house, my mom's sister in Clifton, New Jersey, and the entire family was there, cousins, aunts, uncles, cousins. I mean, the table was the food on that table. They had 5 pizzas. They had a bowl of shrimp on ice. They had mussels marinara. They had every pastry imaginable. The food was incredible. They all knew my great aunt, of course, and they were so excited about the book. And we were all talking and laughing. And my husband turned to me and said, now I see where you get it from. Just interrupting and talking over people and using 4-letter words, but, with joy and in the spirit of fun. And I was looking across the table at my cousin's daughter, Carly, and I said to my husband, she's a little like Bella. And Brian said, oh, yeah. And Carly caught my eye. And I said, would you like to do a little reading? Would you like to read a little bit? And Carly said, yeah. And she grabbed the book. She went in the corner. She said, give me 5 minutes to prepare. And then,
I like that. I respect that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when she was ready, she got up and she read all of the dialogue in the Coney Island chapter, in the Coney Island dance interview chapter.
Yeah.
And she was hilarious. The entire family was in stitches. And in that moment, I felt like my great aunt was in the room.
Yeah.
And her niece, her grandniece was playing her. And I felt my grandparents were there and I felt my parents were there. It was really joyful. So I've gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of people, but the most touching feedback has come from immediate family who actually knew her and just love the book and think it's amazing.
Well, the character of Belladonna and also almost all the supporting characters, they're all people that could be cast aside, could be thought of. You kept using this word invert to describe Torelli, and like a I haven't heard that word in a long time. It just means like a sinner, a degenerate. Like what do you, when you think of invert, what does that mean to you?
Well, that's back then, back in the 1920s and 30s, that was the word used.
Yeah,
to
invert.
Gay or queer.
Meaning you're doing it backwards, or you're like, in other words, everything about you is opposite of what it needs to be. But your book celebrates all of those people. It sort of redeems them in a way. And I think that's kind of, even the people in the Coney Island, like more of the, like those circus, quote unquote, freak show types, that are in the book they're all sort of celebrated and redeemed. Going back to the recipes, as a person that doesn't cook very much, if I was going to try one of them, what's the easiest one? What's my starter recipe?
Oh, the tomato gravy.
Tomato gravy, pretty basic.
Yeah.
All right.
Try the tomato gravy. And then I would, once you do that, I would graduate to the meatballs.
Right on. I love
and then
it.
once you do that, I would move on to chicken parmesan.
Okay. All right. I like it. I like that we've got a roadmap. Speaking of journeys, were there times along the way when you would get really discouraged and put it away for a while? Like, what kept you going with this project?
Well, I want to say the spirit of my great aunt is what kept me going. You know,
That's amazing.
The Bella-ness of it, and the fact that she needed to be out in the world. She needed to be a champion for all those underdogs and inverts.
All the inverts. Let's hear for the inverts. Where are my inverts? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
There were times when I put it down for a while and put it aside, but I don't know. Is this the case for you? You tell me. Like, as a writer, do you find yourself writing even when you're not sitting at the computer?
In some ways, like thinking about things, if it's alive in me, but sometimes I don't really have a project that I'm working on in that way. But sometimes if it's alive in me, I'll think about things that are, I don't know, lines or things that people can go, or I'll connect something from real life and then plug it into the story. I'll see something or a behavior or have my own thought or have some kind of like, I don't know, an intellectual kind of epiphany moment. And I'm like, oh, that needs to go into this thing. Like talking about that project where I mentioned the sex scene that I cringed at when going back. There's some things I've learned about myself and my life in the years since I first wrote it that I know can go right into there and make it richer and more truthful and more lived in. And so that's kind of how I think about things. But I'm not super disciplined. Like I'm not somebody that like I write 5 pages every day, no matter like I'm not that guy. And I'm also, it depends, got other projects going on. So, but if it's alive in you, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, you've got a lot going on.
I mean,
you're fingering about a million pots.
I do.
You're very, very similar to Bella in that regard.
That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me.
No, it's true.
Yeah, it's very sweet.
True.
Yeah.
You're a go-getter, and you grab life by the balls and you squeeze them. And I think it's amazing. I think it's really incredible.
That is very meaningful to me because I'm at a point where people around me are retiring. They're set. They're good. They've figured out. They've got their life. They've got their retirement. They got their 401k. I don't know what they did. And they were like, and I had a friend recently say to me, he goes, I was playing the long game and I didn't know it. And he was telling me about his 401k and his pension and all of this stuff. And I'm like, I'm sitting there trying to be happy for him and like not be a jerk. And inside I'm going, fuck, I did this all wrong. Like I don't know, like have, cause I still have real concerns in that area, like real issues. But I had this consultation recently. I recently signed with a dance agent of all things, and they had a person on their staff who comes in once a month or so to do sort of like mental health checkups with dancers or people like it's somebody that comes in once in a while to talk to people about how they're approaching their career or just how they're doing generally. And you could sign up for a slot, and I'm like, I love that stuff. So I signed up for a slot, and it was very valuable to me. But one of the things I said early on in the session, because I was telling her about my journey and the different things I'd done, I said, I followed my bliss, but my bliss didn't know where it was going. And that's kind of how I feel about my life. Like, in other words, I did the things that brought me joy, that felt like I was meant to be doing them, but it hasn't set me up for a life of financial security or any of that. Like, so that's kind of my one-liner about it, but it is how I feel. And at the end of it, she goes, what if that's a good thing? What if that's not a bad thing? I'm like, oh, what if that's a feature, not a bug of my life? That's an interesting idea, because I've been thinking of it as a bug in my life. Like, I picked it, I own it, I have a lot of gratitude around it and things I'm proud of, but it also feels like a mistake in a way, or like I missed some turn off where I could have gotten more solvent about, financial things or whatever. And she was like, no, that's the fact that your bliss didn't know where it's going. What if you didn't look at that as a bad thing, as a tragedy? Yeah. So any thoughts?
You're a showman, you're a showman and you're an entertainer, right? And you bring a lot of joy to people with the work that you do, with
Thank
your
you.
podcasts, with your videos, with the match game. All of it is just your books. You write scripts. Now you've got a dance agent. I mean,
thank you for this therapy session. No, it means a lot to me because it's at a point where I just turned 60, so you question a lot of things, and which kind of brings me back to what you were doing when you were in LA. You were acting. You were in a famous Seinfeld. Which episode was that?
It was The Barber.
The Barber. So, what do you remember about it? What was it like?
It was the episode where Jerry got the bad haircut.
Yep.
And he had to go, and Kramer sent him to his barber to fix it.
Right.
And it's so long ago now. I'm trying to remember the plot. And there was the uncle barber and the nephew barber, and I was the nephew barber, and the uncle's terrible, and Kramer said, go to the nephew, you got to go to the nephew. And when he went into the barbershop, the uncle grabbed him and sat him in the chair and fucked up his hair. And then he arranged to meet me at his apartment, which was sort of like a blind date,
right?
To fix the hair. Yeah.
What do you remember about the experience?
Oh my God, it was a blast. I had the best time. I remember auditioning for it. I remember being in the room with Jerry Seinfeld on the final audition. I think the final callback, it was down to me and one other fella. And I had a headshot back then where I had a sleeveless T-shirt on. It was a very sort of hunky headshot.
Right.
And I remember Jerry Seinfeld looking at the picture going, oh, what's going on with that shirt? Jeez. I thought, too happy with that.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. But I did well in the audition, and next thing I know, I got the call and I was on the show, and it was my original plot was with Elaine,
right? And
it was two uncles and a nephew, and then I had a subplot with Elaine, and I remember thinking after the table read and after the first day of rehearsal, this is about a 40-page script. It's only supposed to be about 20 pages. They're going to have to cut a bunch of stuff. All they need to do is take that nephew out of there, and they'll have a solid 20 pages and go. And that's what they did. I got a call that night. It was Larry Davis who called me at home and said, hi, David, it's Larry David. And I got some bad news. I'm sorry. We're going to have to make the episode shorter. So we're going to have to get rid of the nephew and have it be two uncles. We loved having you, and hopefully we'll have you back. And I said, that's all right, Larry, no problem. 10 minutes later, the phone rang. Hi, David, it's Larry. Hang on. We're in a story meeting. Stay near the phone. Okay, I hang up. 10 minutes later, we're getting rid of one of the uncles. It's going to be an uncle and a nephew. You're in. See you tomorrow. And that was it.
Amazing.
And I showed up to work, and Larry David, there was a guy named Tom Chironis who was directing, but Larry David was the actual director. I mean, Tom Chironis was in the booth, and he was calling all the camera shots, but Larry David was the one on the floor telling you exactly when to say the line, how to say the line, what to do on the line. And I learned so much from him in that 1 week about how to do comedy. He was a kind, smart, supportive, incredibly talented guy that I learned a lot from, and I had the best time ever.
And it was in front of an audience, right? You guys
did. It was in front of a live audience.
Yeah. Do people recognize you from that after it was on? Because everybody watched that show back then.
They did, yeah. Even walking out from the soundstage to the parking lot to get in my car, this one kid who was in the studio audience stopped me and wanted to talk to me. And when I started talking to him, he goes, "You're not Italian? I thought you were Italian," because in the show I have an Italian accent. And I said, "No, well, that was all, I had to learn to do that for the show." But really cool. A lot. I've been recognized a bunch since then. But I did Murder, She Wrote. I did Matlock. I did Kojak. I was a villain on Days of Our Lives. I was a villain on Another World. I did a lot of television as an actor before I transitioned into screenwriting.
Yeah. And you also had the movie you said that Shirley MacLaine directed. What was that experience like? Wow.
Working with Shirley MacLaine, that was like riding the Coney Island Cyclone roller coaster.
Yeah.
It was crazy. She was unbelievable. It was joyful. It was painful. It was weird. It was fun. It was so many things. And I got to work with, movie making is a director's medium.
Right.
So she got a hold of my script, which was about a little gay boy who wanted to wear dresses and enter spelling bees.
Right.
And basically turned it into a little bit of something else. but I got to work with Kathy Bates and Jennifer Tilly and Gary Sinise and Shirley MacLaine.
And you were part of the process. You were along the ride, because sometimes people, they sell the script and then they're kind of shunted aside. But you got to go on the whole journey.
I was on the entire journey. I was on the set every day.
Wow.
So we shot in Wilmington, North Carolina, and Shirley wanted me by her side, and I was there for the entire shoot, which for a writer is pretty much unheard of. It's pretty rare.
She was known, especially at that time, for some of the more new age, her ideas and her books and stuff like that. Did she ever talk to you about that stuff?
We talked about everything. Yeah. We talked about aliens. We talked about reincarnation. We talked about the script. We talked about Hollywood. We talked about what Marilyn Monroe was like, what Barbara Streisand was like, what her brother Warren Beatty was like.
Right, because they don't seem close, but are they? They don't seem close at all. Sometimes you forget they're siblings, but maybe they're good.
I think I think my impression is that they are closer than they let on.
Right on. I like that.
She talked about going to their house and palling around with the kids, and she was very much Auntie Shirley.
I love that. Yeah. I love that.
That was her nickname during the shoot, in fact, Auntie Shirley.
What went into your decision to leave LA?
I think, it was the 90s. And it was a different time. We talked earlier about what the world is like now, what the world of entertainment is like now, and the fact that we could turn on television and see something like Heartstopper. I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine what that would have been like to have teenagers? I think it's amazing, and I envy the teenagers of today that they can turn it on and watch these love stories. And show business was not like that back then. The world wasn't like that back then. The world wasn't ready for Bruno, the story of a 8-year-old cross-dressing spelling bee champion. It just wasn't. But I was. So I thought, I'm out of here. I'm going up to Portland, Oregon, and I'm going to write a book. And I'm going to write a book that's chock full of queer characters and chock full of queer optimism. And that's what I spent 20 years doing.
And you did it.
And I wrote 1,000 pages, and it was in 3 parts, and part 1 is now book 1, and I'm working on the next book.
Oh, so there might be, there's more to the story. More to the story.
Oh,
all right. Well, let's remind everybody where they can come see us in LA. We're David's going to be doing a reading and a conversation and with me at Book Soup, one of my favorite bookstores, on November 10th at 3 p.m. if you're in LA. And how else can people learn about the book? I imagine it's on all the platforms.
Yeah, they just Google it. That you can read reviews, and it's on Amazon. You can get it at your local independent bookstore. If they don't have it in stock, ask them to order it. Yeah.
The Queen of Steeplechase Park, which is that part of Coney Island, Steeplechase Park?
So there were 3 major parks in Coney Island. There was Steeplechase Park, which was a giant glass structure. There was Dreamland, and there was Luna Park.
Love it. All right. I still hear Luna Park, like they've named restaurants after it, and like it's a term that has lived on from that time. Do you have any souvenirs from your great aunt? Do you have any of her stuff, or apart from the photos?
I had the top of her trophy, her Best Bust trophy.
She won Best Bust?
She won Best Bust, yeah. Yeah, she was a 38 Triple D. She proudly told me that when I interviewed her. Yeah. And she won Best Bust. I forget which year it was. I want to say it was 1936. And I gave it to my brother, who's an artist, and he created an art piece, a Coney Island art piece with it.
That's amazing. What was she like when you interviewed her? Was she, in terms of like making sense of her life, like what were her insights, and what did she sort of learn from her journey of being the kind of person that she was, that you wanted to put into the book?
Well, right before I interviewed her, her son found her. So she was, I want to say, maybe 82.
Wow.
So she had him when she was 15.
The son that had been taken away when she became pregnant at 15.
So he was in his early to mid 60s, right? And the phone rang in Deerfield Beach, Florida, and she picked it up, and he said, "Is this Amelia Agar?" And she said, "Yes." And he said, "Do you know who this is?" And she immediately knew, and she burst into tears.
Oh, my God.
And then she had an hour-long conversation with him. And she went back to the dining room table in the condo, and her third husband, my Uncle Tom, was sitting there. And he said, "Who the hell was that on the phone?" And she said, "That was my son." He said, "What are you talking about?" She said, "I had a son." "When the hell did you have a son?" "When I was 15 years old, I had a son, and that was him on the phone." So she had reunited with him.
Wow. But the third husband didn't know about it.
No.
Wow.
No. And so I think had I caught her before that reunion, I might have gotten a bit of a bolder interview out of her. But I think that there was so much shame and so much hesitancy around the wildness of her story that she didn't want to expose too much of that because she was afraid, I think, of what her son might think.
Interesting. Well, even in the book, Belladonna is super bold about so many things, but she is so ashamed of that episode when she was 15, of how it played out, of what happened to her. Like she can't, she's not always honest with people, especially Francis around it. Like but in other ways, she's out there, she's bold, she's, take it, here it is, take it or leave it, but not about that. And I think that's really kind of poignant. Here's my final question. When I work on a project and I'm working on I've been doing a lot of biography stuff in the last few years, writing for podcasts about, James Baldwin or Jane Fonda or somebody like that. There's always something about them that I try to take with me and like some attribute that I find inspiring. And I'm like, what would they do in this situation? Or I need to be more like this person. Is there something about her character, the book and your great aunt, that you try to embody sometimes in your own life? Do you try to be like, okay, what would Belladonna do here?
Yeah, it's like that saying from The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Every time she's on stage, the manager would say, "Tits up."
Yeah.
And that's how I've learned to live my life after writing about my great aunt. Tits up.
That's amazing to me. And that means what? Confident?
That
unapologetic?
Confident, unapologetic. Get out there, grab life by the balls and shake them till they're dry. Tits up and tits forward and have fun.
I love it. And you use the word tits a lot in the book. You're not like, her breasts are like tits. It's tits and it's fucking. And I sort of, unabashedly so, and I sort of loved it. So I think that's a great way. Everyone needs to be tits up. Everyone, if you're listening to this, tits up.
Yeah, maybe that's the byline for this episode. Tits up.
Tits up. I love it. All right, David, thank you so much. This was a pleasure, and I look forward to seeing you in Los Angeles. I'll try to have some other questions to ask in addition to probably some of these. But congratulations on a really winning book. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure entirely.
Thanks again to David Ciminello. Pick up his book, The Queen of Steeplechase Park. And if you're in LA, come see us at Book Soup on Sunday, November 10th at 3 p.m. It's going to be fun. All right, so this happened. Well, it was recently Halloween, and I did a few things that were kind of Halloween adjacent, although I didn't really dress up and go to a big party. But my dance teacher that I've been taking a lot, Michael Rooney, he had a master class where they did a twist on Thriller. And he's the one that teaches the Jazz Over 40 class that I take every week. And his master classes are kind of a special event. And they're longer. They're much more challenging. There's much more choreography. It's more technically demanding. And I've been to a few of these. And they're always this existential journey that I go on. Because they're like 2 hours long. And somewhere around 1 hour, I question every choice I've ever made in my life. I literally start writing my suicide note in the class. I'm like, dear world, because it's so hard and you can kind of do it, but there's too many and there's more moves and then your mind goes blank and then your stamina and you're hyperventilating and you're like, what am I doing? And there's always younger people there. There was like a 20 or 30 something a guy teaching the combo with him, and he would literally do moves where he would fly like a newsie, and land 4 seconds later. Like, you're just like, oh. And then, but I'm like, Dennis, if Kamala Harris can throw together a presidential campaign in 3 months and crush it, you can get through this masterclass. So I was like, don't give up. Just do your best. But I'm telling you, it is a journey. It is a journey that I go on where at one point I question everything I've ever done in my life and how my life choices have led me to this godforsaken place where I'm trying to do a Thriller dance. Anyway, but I got through it, and it ended up being fun, and I'm going to keep challenging myself because you know what? Tits up. Tits up, everybody. The other thing I did that was kind of Halloween-esque, I went to Let's Make a Deal. A friend of mine was possibly going to be a contestant. I can't say what happened, but it was really kind of fun. Like, the vibe there is really friendly. I've been to Price is Right Now and Let's Make a Deal both times, and I feel like Let's Make a Deal is kind of more fun. Like, first of all, everyone's got goofy costumes, and they encourage you to get to know the other people in the audience when you're in the holding room. And then when you're there on the set and it's unfolding, there's kind of a fun, like, loosey-goosiness to the proceedings with Wayne Brady, the host, and the producers are kind of being playful with each other, and the supporting people like Tiffany's the model who is a rocket ship of a person. Like, I just couldn't take my eyes off her, and she's funny and everything. And the announcer guy's being sassy and funny, and like, it was a vibe. It was a fun time, and I was kind of into it compared to The Price is Right, which I've always loved probably more as a game. When I was watching it as a kid, I was obsessed. Man, I just remember how loud it was in there, and you couldn't hear yourself think about prices. So, like, it was just like it was so loud, and at Let's Make a Deal, they play dance music in the breaks, and people are encouraged to dance around. So, I like that. But anyway, I can't tell you what happened on the show, but I had a fun time, and I liked the vibe. It was fun and playful and loosey goosey, and there you go. And I didn't even know what zonks were. I guess zonks in current Let's Make a Deal parlance is when you get that dumb prize where you should have picked the other curtain, but you ended up with like a barrel of apple cores is like your prize, and that's called a zonk. I didn't know that, but I learned that. So the point is, try not to get zonked, and also tits up. All right, that's it for this week. Shout out to Oscar Rosario for mixing the episodes. My theme music is by Mark Daniels for placement music. We'll catch you next time on Dennis Anyone. Bye!